Hello and welcome back to day 4 of 100 days of VBA. Today we're going to build on what we did for the first 3 days by fetching and writing data to and from our spreadsheet, by doing it but fetching based on a dynamic range. So it doesn't matter how many rows of data, we're not going to specify A1 to A5, we're going to use VBA to figure out how many rows of data we need to fetch. So let's get started the usual way. Developer, Visual Basic, then we're going to create a new module. In here, we're going to define our function. So sub, let's call it dynamic fetch. Then I'll add n sub for me. We're going to do our usual dim to declare our variable called data, and it's going to be a variant again as last time. And now today we're going to define an extra variable as well. It's going to be called dim last row as integer. So an integer is just a round number. So that's, as we know, all the rows are round numbers. So that's going to be the type for our last row variable. So let's find our last row. So we're going to say last row equals, and we're going to start in the usual way. So application.activeSheet, but instead of range, this time we're going to put cells, and then we're going to put .find. So if you've ever used Control F or the find function in your spreadsheets, this is kind of the VBA version of that. It's very similar. But we're looking for any text, so anything that signifies that it's the last row. So to define any text, in quote marks, you put asterisk. So that's a special character, which in virtually all programming languages would mean search for any text, any number of characters, doesn't matter whether they're letters, numbers, or whatever, just find any text. So that's the first bit of our find function. The second bit, we're going to define what we call the search order. So this is going to be a special keyword in the find function. And then to give it its value, it's colon equals XL by rows. So that means we're searching row by row to find any character that we're looking for. And then to find the last row, what we're going to do is give it another keyword called search direction. So there we go. And again, it's then colon equals to signify the value that we're going to give search direction. And this time we're going to say xlPrevious. Now, why are we saying xlPrevious? Because if you think, when we say active sheet cells, we're starting in the top left of our spreadsheet, cell A1. And if we were to say xl next for the search direction, it would simply find the next text. So that would be in cell A2, which would be B. But that's not our last row. By saying xlPrevious, what we're telling it to do is actually search upwards. But because we're already in the top row, that means it's going to loop back down all the way to the bottom of our spreadsheet and search up the rows, up the rows, up the rows, up the rows until it gets to our first, if you're going up, or last, if you're coming down, line that has a value in it. So that'd be A5. So that's why I say xlPrevious. And the last thing we're going to do is say .row, because what that find function returns is a row and a column where it's found that data, and we're only interested in the row today. So there we go. Now we have our last row, and now this is going to look pretty similar to what we've done before. So we're going to say data equals application dot active sheet dot range. And we're still going to start in A1, so we know where we're starting. This time we just don't know how many rows we want to fetch. So let's say A1 colon A. And this is where we usually would put A5 and define our range fully. But this time I'm just going to say A, we'll say quote mark, then ampersand. So ampersand means join the two things either side of it together. So we're going to join our A1A to our last row variable, which in this case we know is going to be 5, but that means that's dynamic when we're fetching our data. And as usual, we're going to say value. And lastly, we're just going to write that back to the sheet. So we'll say application dot active sheet dot range C1 to C. And we're going to do the same thing again here because we don't know how many rows we're going to fetch. We're going to say C1 colon C and last row dot value equals data. So there we have it. And now if we run that, run dynamic fetch, then we've written our 5 rows from A to C. But what it means is we can now add, say, FG in column A, and without changing any of our VBA code, hit play again, and we've automatically fetched it all. So if I do that from the start, so delete everything in C, and then run, then we're fetching all of that data. And because of the way we're using this find function to search up our rows to find the last data, it doesn't matter if there's a gap. So say we left a blank cell, and then we said I, and then H, and then another blank, and then I, and we came back into Visual Basic. Let me just clear C again, and we hit run. There you go, it's fetched all the data. It doesn't matter if there's gaps in it or anything. We've still found the last row. So there we go, that's fetching data when we don't know how many rows of data we're going to fetch. Tomorrow we'll expand that into looking for a whole table of data, so maybe A1 to C11, and then finding the next blank row to add that into after our current data. Looking forward to it.